What if you could learn a few new relationship skills to better design your legacy so the attorneys don't take everything? I have the pleasure to introduce you to Alex Pardi. He is a fellow coach and consultant when it comes to helping individuals with their personal development. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks, Angelina. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here and just the opportunity to speak with you about relationships and how they affect legacies and all the in between.
Yes. So I would like to start with a problem today. And the problem that you brought up is oftentimes the children get the short straw regarding the fallout, but it's more than that. It's when we look at the statistics today, there's a ton of ego. And I know your mission is to prevent marriage breakups. In fact, your mantra is divorce is preventable. So
Yeah.
where would you like to start? Would you like to start with your own personal story?
Yeah, we could start there. That's a good place to start. My parents got divorced a few years ago, and I was already an adult, but even though I was an adult, it was probably one of the top two worst experiences of my life. And part of what I saw in my parents, and my parents are great people. It's really not a bash on their character, or not even a comment on their character. It's more that they never really had the tools or the skill sets, just like so many of us don't have the tools and skill sets to learn how to uh, kind of find peace and discuss our issues or differences or problems in a marriage well, or in any relationship for that matter. A lot of people just don't know how to bring up the fact that they're upset about something in a kind, in a calm way. So I always thought that their whole relationship conflict was kind of preventable if they had had certain skills in place that they didn't.
Sure.
And
And I think you called it the science of peace when we chatted during our preamble.
yeah, I've been sort of informally called it the science of peace. I saw that in an article I read at some point. It was more about the uh, bus- businesses in the private sector, but the science of peace is just something I call, how do you peacefully engage with someone when you're upset at them, or
Are in a
how do you
disagreement.
exactly?
Yeah. So let me go back to the problem again, because I think this is where people can relate, no matter where they're listening in their location or their age demographic or their net worth, because these are human nature situations that transcend. So I think one of the problems is when there's a ton of ego and then you add contempt to that as well as defensiveness. And I thought, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you again in our preamble, I saw this interview between Harry and Meghan Markle, and he
Hmm.
shot her this look regarding the Queen, and it was of contempt. And the four body language experts had explained that contempt in a marriage, not a good thing. And
No.
so, especially early on, so he had that look on his face. Now, I'm not saying that look was accurate just because these four body language experts had that opinion, but I think I mean, that's a deal killer right there, especially when there are past resentments that come forward. What would you
Yeah.
like to say about ego and not letting go of, let's say, past trauma? And I know in your scenario with your parents, it wasn't necessarily like substance abuse or what Harry and Meghan had to face, but still, ego is ego.
Yeah. So ego, in from what I've seen and in my experience, ego is one part of it. Contempt, I don't know if you've ever heard of John Gottman or the Institute, but
I've heard of John Gottman as an author, but I have not read any of his books.
okay. So I haven't read any of his books either, but he's got a really interesting and great science-based approach, kind of data-based approach to relationships, to the point where they can kind of determine if someone's going to break up with a 90% accuracy. And he's got a really interesting categorization of issues that happen in a relationship. And they're called the four horsemen, relating to the four horsemen of the book of
The
Revelation.
apocalypse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, the first horseman is contempt. And um, so it's interesting that you raise that, because contempt is of those four horsemen. It's contempt, stonewalling, criticism, and defensiveness.
Hmm. Mm.
Of those four, contempt is the one that where if it's present in a relationship and it's sustained, it's the number one indicator of or predictor of breakup, predictor of divorce. So you're absolutely right. Like what these people were saying in
The four body language experts.
the four body language experts saying this thing about contempt. So it's normal to get angry at someone. It's normal to get to even have strong feelings of contempt at someone. Like, we're human, right? It can happen. I think the point there is it sustained, over a long period of time? Because contempt eventually, just because you feel it, there's also the element of like how you communicate it. So typically people will throw their contempt rather than articulating their contempt or articulating their anger or what they are upset about. And that's very different from throwing it. So like throwing it is more like name calling, sarcasm,
This is
anger.
warfare.
Yeah, exactly. And sorry, the only other thing I'd add to that is that it's it's really about it's not so much just about letting go. There is an important letting go is one part of it, but I think that between two people there needs to be a way to resolve rather than just one person kind of letting go by themselves. And that includes discussion. It includes the will to forgive, like wanting to forgive.
Hmm.
But it's nuanced, and it's really dependent on the couple a lot of the time.
Yes, and I wanted to also bring up that you had said about your parents that it's not just incompatibility, because there can be two very different people and they could have complementary skill sets, but they never learned how to make the differences work. And I know oftentimes in the business world, they say, oh, well, conflict can be creative. And you have two people at the boardroom table and you're supposed to learn because money is involved. And this is so much more personal. Of course, there's money involved. And we'll get to the attorney bit in a moment before I transition our conversation over to the remedies. But you had said that a lot of times there can be arguments about things from the past that people have not let go. And these past resentments can kill a marriage. And also that people select the wrong moment. They're not only not managing their tone of voice, but when they throw contempt at each other, that just sets the almost like the culture in the relationship. And if they don't have a consistent way of checking in, would you like to say more?
Yeah. So the element where you're talking about confrontation as creative, there is a step before the creative bit, and that is it's collaborative. So in order for you to generate anything out of a situation, there has to be an element of collaboration. And if your main goal, and this is where ego comes in, so like if your contempt or your anger is really being controlled by ego, then it's going to be zero sum. It's going to be destructive. It's going to be
Like two
my
T-Rexes fighting.
exactly like two T-Rexes fighting, my victory at the expense of yours.
Yeah.
Whereas if you bring in the element of collaboration, then that's kind of what sets the stage for a fertile conversation to create something new or to create a new dynamic or outcome. I'm not just saying create something physical. I'm saying, you can create a new system that's kind of intangible. So for example, as you were mentioning, the way of checking in. So one thing that's so as an entrepreneur, you probably know this very well. It's sometimes very difficult to stop working in your business so you can work on your business, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
More top-down view.
You have to let go of a little bit of control.
Sorry?
You have to let go of a little bit of control.
Exactly. So you can apply that same principle to relationships. Most people are stuck in their relationship, but if you have a time once a week to check in, or once every 2 weeks, it depends on the state of your relationship, but typically once a week tends to work quite well, where you kind of take a step back, you talk with your spouse or whomever about how you think the relationship is going. And it's really a time where you shouldn't, like, if you talk about how the relationship is going and you can back off from the whole blame thing, you know, I blame you for this, or this is your fault, you know, this is working well, this isn't working well, maybe we need to find solutions for that thing, maybe we need to look into this more, how can we fix this, how that really starts to invite that collaborative environment, because you're now working on your relationship rather than working in your relationship. In your relationship is all the kind of romance that you try to do, the acts of service, the love languages, so be those acts of service, physical touch, words of affirmation, um, and the other two. But yeah, I think having that that kind of meta moment where you're looking down on your relationship and saying what's working well, what's not, that is a really, really great way to start thinking creatively, like really bring your thoughts to kind of that frontal lobe, um, more rational way of thinking about things instead of just the purely emotional, the kind of vindication craving
The
sort of.
reactiveness. Yes. So you've got some amazing slides. But before we get to those slides, I just want to uh, bring up the problem just because I just want to milk it for a moment.
Yeah,
So when somebody does decide to pursue divorce, and I'm not saying that divorce is the answer or not to get divorced is the answer. I think this is exploring what the intention we set, which is learning a few new skills, which we're going to get to in a moment.
yeah,
But the consequences, and you've brought this up in prior videos, is that the individuals can squander finances as well as opportunities. It's not just the what could have been, and it's not just what you have talked about of losing the kids' college fund because it becomes the attorney's kids' college fund.
right.
But I also want to bring up something, and this has to do with legacy planning, and it's divorced men too, but I hear it more from divorced women, that
Okay.
divorced women often pay a price because when they get divorced, their assets can decrease and they have to start all over again. Not that it's fair to men, because men can often be the ones who build up generational wealth, and the attorneys, like we have seen with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, bless their hearts, it can be dragged out for years, and attorneys get paid by the hour, and they can just rack up those divorce fees, and there is no lady of justice oftentimes, especially when they're going after their spouse's hard-earned money, assets, chateaus in France.
Yeah, all of the above.
Well, I think you made a point that you don't get what the attorneys promised oftentimes, and that's a danger of additional collateral damage.
Right, exactly. Um, I mean, I'm seeing this with I'm helping a client right now through a child custody battle, and you know, the it's the initial free call that a lawyer gives you is you have to see it for what it is. It's a sales call. It's not a I'm getting free advice call. It's
Let me
their
help you call.
Yeah, it's a I'm going to give you some value so that you think that to make it easy for you to choose me, and I'm going to basically promise you things, or I'm going to say that things can go a certain way, even though, you know, once you actually get into the fight, it can go very differently, just because there are so many elements that are even outside of the lawyer's control that they can say, yeah, I can go quickly, but it can also not go quickly, because once you involve the lawyers, you involve the courts, and then there's so many other nodes in that whole equation that the unpredictability just shoots up like exponentially. So
So if it wasn't messy before, it can get more messy. All right. So on that note, I think you brought a few slides, and I know that you've said that when one spouse says that they don't love the other, it might not be that it's unrepairable. It could be that there are critical tools to change the trajectory of the conflict, to diffuse and de-escalate.
right. So let me just share this slide with you. So what you're talking about is basically the very common kind of negative spiral that people get into, which is, and by the way, you have to kind of view the top of each next spiral down as the equilibrium point. So you're in an argumentative pattern on the left, and at the top of the spiral, that's the equilibrium. Then you have some kind of argument or some kind of disagreement that starts to bring the relationship down. And then because you don't know how to argue well, that like argument brings the equilibrium down even further, and so on and so forth, until you kind of end up where you're starting to spend a lot of money on therapists. The stress is starting to really bring down your immune system. You might starting to get sick. You might be starting to perform a lot worse at work just because of the amount of stress and the fact that you're getting sick. I've had, I've known, I've actually had clients who they would get caught in these like really long arguments. We're talking like 3 to 4 hour arguments with their spouses, and then they wouldn't be productive at all on for their work. So,
Because it contaminates them. How could it not?
yeah, it contaminates them, and it just sucks the life force out of you, right? Like it just really, and so you end up, your heart starts to break. That's the image on the left, and your money starts to go down because you're spending money and you're not making as much because your productivity is down.
Because
And
it's
so,
lowering the frequency, the resonance, the
exactly,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. And if you see the words down there at the bottom, it says logic and right versus wrong. That's the characteristics of that kind of argument. Is
It's
so
fighting, win
it's
lose.
fighting, you're trying to prove the other person wrong, you're trying to explain how your point of view is correct and their point of view is wrong. It's a litigious state that is just amplified once you bring the lawyers in and you go for divorce. So I'm not saying that divorce isn't the right answer for people, although I do think that the rates of divorce are climbing astronomically, and I think the world would be a better place if families would keep together more. But
But we won't bring up silent weapons for quiet wars. Go ahead,
right,
Alex.
yeah, we let's not get into that. But so divorce might be the right answer, but if you're still able to um, talk through your differences in somewhat of a constructive way, because at some point, if you have kids especially, you're still going to need to co-parent with them. So um, being able to resolve your differences, even if you don't stay together as a couple, is going to save you a ton of money, because you can just bypass and agree quickly without the involvement of the courts having to decide for you. You're going to save yourself a ton of stress because you won't be fighting as much, and you're going to save yourself stress because the other parent is going to be more collaborative with you, especially around how much you get to see the kids, and are they going to really be petty with you? Like there's so many possible negatives that happen by staying in the negative spiral.
Absolutely. And I want to also provide a key point that you made, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
Huh.
when you were growing up, you had said it's not the child's or the kid's job when the parents are spiraling out of control because they don't have these basic skills or they're unwilling to be coachable and to listen. And so a lot of times I think the children that get caught up, in between, they're used as pawns, as leverage, and that's unfortunate. But you're talking about like when somebody gets their heart hurt,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, that other person can become the enemy and they're not supposed to be the enemy, but it can get there even if it's not supposed to go there. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of times children are growing up way too fast if they have to be the mediators at home.
Totally.
It's like, they become what's called adult children. And I wish that this could be a curriculum given to all military families, because one of the things I share to you is I think a lot of military guys go and they are taught to destroy the village. But then where is the course of let's repair and rebuild the village?
Right. Right. Absolutely. I think so just to riff off of that, this would be something that would be ideal to teach in school. Just because as kids grow up, the ability to learn how to talk your differences out, how to regulate your emotions, how to uh, articulate yourself rather than throw your emotions at someone. That's where it needs to start. That's where it needs to, in my opinion, that's where it needs to start, because once you're an adult, right, you kind of have your habits a little bit more set. They can be harder to change or alter. So it really start in my opinion, it should really start early on in school so that kids kind of grow up with this knowledge of language and the ability um, to handle these kinds of situations. It's basically like the martial arts of emotions, right? Like you're learning how to defend yourself. You're learning how to manage the situation.
and the
in a way
energy of the
that
situation.
exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to put you on the spot again. One of the things you said that I thought was so great in one of your prior videos is you said the kids lose their world regarding what they knew and the legacy that was meant for them. And they could,
Yeah,
of course, have a new legacy, but I think it's that sensitivity to acknowledge that perspective. And
yeah,
yeah. So to overcome that cycle of constant bickering that leads to a breakup and disconnection, I think that you mentioned how important. I'm just going to rattle off three things and you can comment on them because these are your ideas. You said number one, to check in about the state of the relationship, being able to air out and listening more than speaking, even if it's like a fun evening, a date night, doing something new and not
yeah,
talking about the problems. And when I see what's happening today with inflation or even family businesses, the level of stress, and we're going to talk about stress in a moment regarding
yeah.
why some people are so angry today, whether that's the heavy metals or other macro influences that are outside of the relationship that are influencing it. That's the first thing that you said. Would you like to comment in on any of that regarding checking in about the state of the relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I was mentioning earlier about checking in, it gives you that time to it gives you that chance to step away and work on your relationship rather than in your relationship. And just the act of doing that, having a regular cadence of that. I'm not saying like checking in once a year, like that doesn't help. Like it's almost like you kind of have to treat your relation. And some people say this, you need to treat your relationship like a business. And I I think that is I don't love the connotation there, but I do think that you kind of need to be act as the board of one of the as a functioning member of the board of directors of your relationship. That's that's what I mean by kind of check in on your relationship.
Yeah, well, I think what you're referring to is not taking it for granted in terms of being proactive. The
Yeah.
second thing, thank you for sharing that. And actually, you know what? I think I'm going to ask you, how would somebody check in? Would they say, like, I don't know. I'm going to bring up Harry and Meg again. Harry, how do you feel about a relationship this week? Is that how somebody would approach it in terms of even extending the olive branch?
Yeah. So I think that there's like basically um there's your kind of meta questions like what did you enjoy? What did you not enjoy? Or what do you enjoy? What do you not enjoy? What do you want to continue? What do you want to discontinue? And then you kind of have your operational questions of what's working well and then what's not working well and then how do you improve.
Great.
So does that make sense or was
Yeah,
that a
I
little
think that's wonderful. I think that's great. So let me, because I have a limited window of time with you, let me move on to the second remedy that you've brought up in your
sure.
prior videos. You said oftentimes anger can control a person and they just can't stop exploding. There can be routine explosions but there could also be a commitment to what you said, controlling your anger. I might, and this is, I'm going to debate with you a little bit here.
Yeah.
I would say instead of controlling their anger, I think the key would be to get really curious about like what is it that they are so angry about. Like I know in the coactive coaching model they talk about self-management. Okay, well,
Mhm.
somebody can take a lot of deep breaths, they can manage their anger, but at some point if they could just learn what the heck they're angry about to let it go,
Yeah.
wow, they could sure be free. If they can be strong enough to face it and to drop that hurtful behavior, um, because anger can be a manifestation to physical issues in the body. What say you, Alex?
Yeah, and so that kind of is one of the answering that is also answering the question mark that's right in the middle of the screen of how do you get from the negative spiral to the positive spiral. Anger is actually a very nuanced thing. So there's a difference between being angry once or being angry twice. There's also a difference between having some kind of childhood trauma that makes you angry in a certain situation. And then there's like chronic anger outbursts as well. And you can have a lot of that is actually physiological. So, there's a lot of toxins in our world that, if you're aware of them, it's in the water, it's, coming out of the sky, all these different things, it's in our food. And those toxins, if they build up over enough time, they can actually cause a real strain on the liver or on the brain. And that can actually be one of the reasons why people have anger outbursts by itself. So,
And I have noticed that people are more angry these days.
way more angry than they used to be.
Woo!
Way more, yeah. People are way more reactive. Um, People are way more reactive than they used to be. And so sometimes, to answer your question of trying to actually get curious and figure out why they're angry, if people aren't aware of this stuff, they can make themselves go crazy and think it's all their fault that they're angry, and think it's like, oh, like,
It's just
try to
them.
look for the childhood problem that was the case, but maybe they didn't have a traumatic childhood and they're still angry. And that can be because they might be dealing with a huge toxin load in the body. A lot of what I just shared was medical medium information. So,
Medical
you know,
Medium is a website for any of the listeners. Go ahead.
yeah. It's a book series, and it's an information
It's
source
not,
that is.
yeah, it's not like a psychic service when you said medium.
No,
Okay,
no,
go ahead.
no. It's not a psychic
Okay.
source. But it's an information source to help heal from a lot of these issues, because it kind of answers those missing parts of the question. Like, if most people think if I'm angry, I need to go to therapy, I need to figure out what the childhood trauma was that's making me angry, that I'm so angry about all the time. But like I said, there could be some other physiological issues happening underneath the surface that are kind of the root of this problem.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for speaking into that.
Yeah.
The third remedy I think you brought up regarding, so this is where past trauma could come into play, that if it can cause rage or blind spots, and then can one become the master to blow away the conflict, to figure out what the problem is, and then to attack the problem? Like, don't attack the person, don't attack the spouse, attack the problem. Like, get curious
Right.
about it.
Right. So yeah, I think, and this is, again, it's also answered by the checking in, the bringing in some tools to help your body, support your body in better ways, bringing in some hydration, bringing in a lot of fruit. That can really start to lower the amount of anger and heat in your body.
And I know I'm interrupting right now, so hold your
Okay.
thought for 1 second. I know you've also said that no matter the narcissism spectrum today, and not that we're going to have a conversation about narcissism, but that one
Well,
party can take ownership of their rage and behavior. And you've seen the positive results where somebody eventually goes, yeah, maybe I shouldn't, you know, get so mad. And then one day they just decide that they'll self-reflect.
yeah, so having epiphany moments like that is something that kind of happens as you build awareness. So I've seen people who they come across, for example, the John Gottman information about contempt, and they realize that, even though they thought, like, because some people think like, oh, I am wounded, so like and this is how I express my anger, so it has to be okay, right?
Well, that becomes their identity. I am the victim, or I am the sick
Right.
person, or I am the, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And then they've seen the Gottman information says contempt is the number one predictor of breakup, and they'll go, oh, okay, so this is a common thing. It's something that can change. I should change it because it will lead me to divorce. And that, just by doing that, just by having that kind of increase in information and awareness, they start to decide to make the decision to take control of their anger. And then that's kind of what sorry, and I think I've now understood more of what your question was. It's basically like, how do you take ownership, take responsibility for how you're behaving?
Well,
And part of
absolutely.
it is just the decision to, right? And it doesn't mean that you're going to change overnight, but it does mean that at least now you know what you're working towards.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the third point that I think you brought up was when one party brings something up, it could be rooted in childhood trauma. It might have nothing to do with that
Correct.
person in front of them. And I think
Correct.
to get really clear about that is important.
Absolutely. Because it also helps the person who's on the receiving end of the anger.
Oh, I bet it
So
does.
yeah, absolutely. Because if most people who are in love, and I say most people, not everyone, but most people who are in a relationship, who are in a committed relationship, who are in love, they love each other and they want the best for each other, and they will take criticisms seriously from the other person, right? And if you're on the receiving end of contempt or rage, that can be very hurtful, because you really start to doubt yourself if you are, not a good person, if you're the one hurting them, or that kind of thing, especially if there's a lot of compassion in the relationship. And
And it can lead to self-gaslighting, which may, again, not have been the intention, but that becomes the fallout, the collateral damage. If you want to take the slide down for a moment, I know you have some more.
Yeah. So just knowing that making it aware, making the reality aware that my anger isn't because of you, and it's not your fault. It's nothing that you're doing, can really start to help you view the anger as something an issue by itself that needs to be healed, that doesn't need to be taken personally. It's not a cause for anyone to feel lesser or worse than, or doubt themselves. They can just kind of view the anger as a physiological issue that needs to be healed, rather than a character-based one, or some other kind of problem. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Sure, absolutely. Or a personality disorder. I think that there's an incredible amount of power just by naming something. And given the amount of stress that people are under these days, I think that to be able to see it for what it is, compared to having it then become emotional abuse, could save marriages. Okay. So absolutely. So you brought up the question of, did you do what it took to make it work regarding ending that negative spiral? I know you've got a few more slides to share, because those fights can take over one's day. And so I'm going to transition now to another remedy that you brought up, being able to show understanding for another's point of view without actually agreeing with their point of view. Yeah.
Yeah. The magic.
Take it away, Alex.
That's what I call that the art science of communication. It's part art, part science. There's a lot of literature out there about how to show someone understanding, and most people don't realize what that means. It's so amorphous. How do you show someone understanding? Well, actually, there's a way to do it, and I can teach you how. No, I mean, apart from that, it's really about positioning yourself kind of as an emotional and intellectual mirror to the person, based on what they're saying. So spending time, if someone's talking at you, first of all, detaching yourself from if there's any personal attacks in there, and just really trying to read what it is they're trying to communicate to you. Are they hurt? Are they in pain? Are they angry? Are they disillusioned? Are they disappointed? Are they, whatever those emotions are, start to bring those and put those into words. Because most people don't actually come at that by saying, I'm angry at you. They'll yell at you and they'll call your names, but they don't want to actually say, I'm angry at you. And so you can be like, sounds like you're angry with me.
Yeah, those are I think the three key words. I don't know if you have a slide for this. I know you do on some of your other videos. You said that in terms of the magic of labeling, but labeling being a very positive word here, not like stereotypes or passing judgment, but labeling as number one, somebody could say, it seems like. So Alex, it seems like you're feeling very cheerful today. Oh, wonderful. Or it looks like, it sounds like. And I think what you're suggesting here is, if I put myself in your shoes, and I'm living and operating in your world, and then the other party can say, the spouse or whoever, I know the two magic words are, that's right. And then you've hit the gold mine. Exactly. When she or he says, that's right. Say more, if you would, Alex.
Exactly. Well, so yeah, labeling is just one piece of it. It's just the kind of emotional piece. And really the key here is in the delivery. So the key here really is not to use I or me in any way. So to say, it seems like you're really upset right now, and to really deliver it in a way where I'm trying to understand you, that's going to start disarming that emotion. That if they've got resentment against you for a long-standing issue, and you go, it really seems like you're hurt right now, and it really seems like you've been hurting for a long time, that can start to really just because everything that gets brushed under the rug, it builds up under the rug, and then the elephant in the room is actually under the rug, right?
And that's not a magic rug that's floating. Go ahead.
No. And so as you start, and really the elephant in the room that's under the rug is just a big pile of dust. So as you start airing out that dust, right?
Respectfully.
Respectfully, really genuinely is not just the case. It has to be genuine. It has to be authentic. If you're coming in there, you're just trying to clear someone's angry with you, just to clear it, and you don't actually care about the person, it's going to show. It's not going to come across, and you're going to fail at this process. So doing that, and then also paraphrasing their worldview back to them. So that is coming back to how to get someone to agree with them or agree with you, but without agreeing with the point of view, is labeling their emotions back to them, and also paraphrasing what they're saying to you. So if Angelina, say we were childhood friends, and you were mad at me because
You stole my cookie.
I stole your cookie, right? Okay, I
Yeah.
stole your cookie. And the reason that cookie was so special to you was because it was the last one of your mom's batch, and let's just say that she then broke her arms and couldn't make you cookies for the next 5 years. Okay,
And she lost her
so
job. She
yeah,
fell.
exactly.
Yeah, she fell on the ice. Go ahead.
Exactly. So there were locusts. So you can say, okay, Angelina, look, it sounds like you're really upset at me because I ate your cookie, and you might go, yeah, I am really upset at you because I ate your cookie.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And then you might say, it was really important to me to be able to eat that cookie because my mom, after the fact, she broke her arm. She couldn't make cookies for me for the next 5 years, and I really miss those cookies. And I could say, okay, so you're upset at me because you wanted that cookie because it was like the last cookie that you were able to have in your childhood, in that really special moment with your mom before she got really hurt. And do you see how, like, I'm now showing you that I understand your point of view?
You get it.
If I've missed it, you're going to tell me, and I can just iterate on that process, and I can say, okay, so I was wrong about that, but it sounds like then that it's really this. I show you that I get it. I'm not agreeing with you for why you're upset with me or how you treated me or anything like that, but I show you that I understand why you're upset. And that can be half the battle right there. I've seen
Yeah.
people be like, okay, I've seen I had a client who his wife was upset with him because she felt like he was trying to be controlling with the money, right? With the money. And he wasn't. He just was a little bit more financially literate and had a better culture with money, a healthier relationship with money than she did. And he was trying to get her to kind of shift with him and grow with him. And she felt like he was being controlling. And so, after this got so bad that she was actually starting to threaten divorce and to take the kids, and I want my freedom and all these things. And then within one conversation, after having worked through me, we prepared some specific labels, and I taught him a few more things than just what I've shared here. But with one conversation, she apologized for the whole past year of divorce threats. She said she was sorry. She said, I want to be with you. I think I need to go to therapy.
Well, I think it's great. And I was going to bring up that I think it's a mature exercise. It sounds simple, but if our caretakers, our parents, our prior generations, our role models around us didn't do this, this is a mature exercise to say,
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to own this and do it different and break pattern.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And that's what it's all about. It's about breaking patterns, right? It's about breaking old ones and establishing new ones that are healthier.
And I'm going to highlight again, one of the common pitfalls is that it can be, as you've said, frustrating and maddening to hear the opinions from someone else that maybe you don't want to hear, and to be able to keep a lid on one's emotions in that moment. So going back to the cookie example, I could say, some really mean and ugly things because you took that cookie. And in that moment, you're just going to have to take some deep breaths and go, okay, and I get it, and not get triggered and reacted, as much as like couples fight and there's like the finger pointed out, there's 3 fingers pointed back.
Right,
And,
right.
and I think that is a good awareness regarding the blind spot, that if one party has the courage to say, Alex, I'm really hurt that you ate my last cookie, that this is a mature way to handle it. Would you like to say anything more about this common pitfall?
Yeah, it's really an exercise in patience, right? And it's really like, it's easy to get triggered. So if you get triggered easily, then you got to work on that as well. But at some point, right? At some point, like the triggeredness needs to stop. And it's either going to stop from you or it's going to stop from the other person. But you also can't wait for the other person to stop getting triggered. And there's also like, mature ways to even deal with getting triggered. And that's to say, I'm getting triggered. I need to stop right now. Let's come back in 20 minutes or whatever once I'm cooler.
Because I called you the Cookie Monster. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Right? We're back to name calling. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. So it does require patience. It requires compassion because you can and patience and compassion and wisdom, because it's like just because they're mad at you and they're hurling accusations or hurling names at
Name
you
calling.
doesn't
Cookie
make it
Monster. I'm
doesn't make it
spitting
true,
on you now. Go ahead,
right?
Alex.
It doesn't make it true, right?
Yeah.
Just because someone's mad at you for something you did, it doesn't mean that they're right about what you did. They're right about your intentions. And so part of that is just having the wisdom to be like, okay, they're mad at me. They're obviously wrong. And they're so emotionally
Charged.
invested in this, that, or charged, that they're not going to see it if I explain it to them intellectually. So I need to first disarm the emotions. And then once they've been disarmed and listened to, then I can kind of explain the situation and get them to see something that they're currently unable to see. And that, I think, is a very compassionate exercise, because it means that you're not forcing someone to be more grown up than they are, or forcing someone to see something that they can't in the situation. And eventually that leads to more peace, I think, because it shows understanding, it shows patience, etc.
And it disarms the emotions in a positive way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
One of the things you've also talked is about shifting to the how and what questions. For
Uh-huh.
example, how can we work on our relationship together? And a part of that is to start thinking about needs,
Right.
but it can't be completely dominated by one side. It
Right.
has to be obviously safe enough that if somebody says, I need this, that it won't get thrown back into their face.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, one of the funny things is that most people will, I don't know if you've ever, well, I don't know what your experience is with arguments, but a lot of people in relationships, they'll be like, why are you doing this? Or why? And typically the why question is the worst question to ask, because the only thing it asks the person to do is to defend and justify what they've just done.
Woo!
Yeah. So it
That's a
doesn't
tweetable
actually,
moment right there.
psychologically, like it has the opposite effect on the change that you're trying to create, right? So if you bring in a how question, if you bring in a what question, those types of questions, if they're directed in, if those questions direct the person to the outcome that you want, you can actually have change arise so much more easily, because it's like, how can we, what are we trying to achieve by arguing here? And that can just kind of reset the argument. Okay, I need you to hear me out on this because I'm upset. Okay, so let me hear you out. Instead of like just going back and forth.
Yeah. I want to bring up something else before I get to the legacy bit and I ask you about what you would like your legacy to be and what that word
Sure.
means to you. You brought
Sure.
up, I thought this was a very interesting insight, that males can sometimes react from events of the past. So there is a cycle of not actually resolving the issues where they or their spouse can feel like that issue is not fully resolved.
Did you say males at the beginning?
Yeah. I think that's what you said in one of your videos.
Oh, did I say males? It's really possible with both males and females.
Sure, sure. So males or females and all the different shades in between these days,
Sure.
the cycle of not actually resolving that issue. And so if that thing is not resolved, then it gets brought up and the joke is like, "Oh, that was everything in the kitchen sink." I think that's the metaphor.
Right.
And if one party says, "Well, you have to let this go or we will never get any better." Well, then that's steering somebody emotionally, even if they might not mean to be emotionally bullying the other party.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, in the mind of the person saying you need to let this go, it makes sense, right? To say,
To them.
yeah, to them, to say, you have to let this go. It's killing our relationship, because they see this recurring problem as eating away at their relationship. And that's an accurate statement, to see that the recurring problem is eating away at their relationship. But what the kind of lack of compassion here and the lack of understanding is the fact that this person is clearly still hurting about something, and they don't feel understood or resolved about it. So it's on you as their partner, who, because you've upset them, it's on you to like try to help them get to the bottom of it. And and just by doing that, because the fact that they keep bringing up the same issue is eroding your sense of the relationship. The fact that they're still hurt about it is eroding their sense of the relationship and their strength of the relationship. So actually having that moment of really deep discussion, deep understanding, that's going to help clear out all the old baggage, as we had in this slide, right? You want to clear out that old emotional baggage, so that you don't have to go to the therapist as much, so that you can be more productive at work, so that you can
Avoid the attorney's office.
Yeah, or the attorney's office, so you can feel more love in your relationship. Like, it's all tied together.
Yeah, I want to bring up two other key points quickly, even though
Sure.
I know we've got a window of time right now.
No, we can, yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay. There was a point that you brought up, and I thought this was so interesting. If one party is not getting enough, in their view, support, consideration, and appreciation, that can erode the strength of that relationship or marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And then there has to be a massive energy shift to make the space so that somebody can feel safe enough to say, and to be vulnerable enough to say, I need more support, or I need more consideration, or I need more appreciation. I think it's interesting sometimes, and I think it works both ways, but I think sometimes males need more appreciation than they let on, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't want to ask for it.
No,
And
they
and I think today, pardon the background noise, I think today with women, which we're going to cover in a moment before we wrap, I think, I said to you before we started that the woman is now like the wealth management profile client
right.
because of family business succession and inheritances. So if that woman is, quote, hunting the deer, wearing the pants, etc., now she's going to want some appreciation because she said, I worked so hard all day.
Right.
Yeah. Would you say more about this regarding when somebody feels that they're not getting enough support, consideration, and appreciation?
Yeah, when someone feels like they're not getting enough support, and especially appreciation. Appreciation was one of those things that goes so far to establishing love and goodwill in a relationship. When someone isn't getting it, um, that's and they act out on it, right? And they don't know how to ask for it. They'll start to take what I call the fastest path to zero, which is, okay, you're not going to appreciate me. You're not going to do this. I'm not going to do this for you. And then on the other side, I'd be like, okay, well, you're not doing that for me. I'm not going to do this for you. And it's like, it's the fastest path to zero, because it's just that petty path of like, I'm not getting this. I'm not going to return in kind. Whereas appreciation, an abundance of appreciation, keeps that goodwill sentiment of, we're just going to keep doing stuff for each other because it's appreciated. It adds to the abundance of the relationship. It helps us perform better. Blah blah blah. All the rest that cascades out of that. Did that answer your question?
It did. And I just wanted to bring that up because I think a lot of times, like when it comes to infidelity, and I'm not supporting the idea of infidelity, but whether it's male or female, a lot of the times it had to do with, well, that other person saw me, that other person listened to me, that other person appreciated me more. And again, I'm not justifying cheating. I'm just saying that
No.
Sometimes it's not that the other person was so much hotter or more
No.
attractive. It could be something as simple as that emotional need was met regarding appreciation.
Yeah.
And I do think, Alex, and this is where no matter somebody's net worth, the vulnerability to say to somebody else, I need this from you, and to have them take it seriously. Because if they don't take it seriously, oh, thank you. Yes. Yeah.
Knife in the heart.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if that person is as rich as Bill Gates or Melinda Gates.
No, it doesn't matter at all.
They could die on that battlefield that moment if they asked for something and it did not get recognized, respected, valued, whatever it is.
Yeah, and this kind of brings me back to the whole conversation of the check-ins or working on your relationship. So some of the great things to do are actually spending time doing some like personality stuff. So be it some personality test like the Myers-Briggs. I don't like the Myers-Briggs thing. I enjoy just because it's very lighthearted and it can just help. It can be this kind of segue for someone to expressing certain things about their personality that their partner might not have understood. And going through exercises like the 5 love languages test, which is super short, even the Myers-Briggs, it's super short. It doesn't take a lot of time, but you get insight into what's actually important to the other person. Because again, that's also something we're not taught. We're not really taught how to find what's meaningful to other people. We're just taught to love as we expect to receive love. And those aren't like, that doesn't make sense, right? Because everybody's individual and everybody has different needs. And being able to work on the relationship, spending that time checking in, actually gives you the chance to express what it is that you need more of. And, if someone's telling you that they need more of something, you darn well should take it seriously, because they're telling you because they don't want to go to someone else and be with someone else and spend the time with someone else, right? They're telling you. So, yeah, does that answer your question?
It does. And I just want to make another point regarding this. And then I'm going to transition over to the legacy questions that I have for you. So if, let's say, and I know you talked about this before, the pettiness element. So if I'm not getting this, if one party says that, why should I even make the attempt? And I think this is where somebody starts pulling back regarding that slide you had regarding the upward spiral and the downward spiral. In other words, why should I even give you that stability? I thought that those were 2 very interesting questions, because then instead of learning how to create the upward spiral, we're back to warfare and, breadcrumbing, stonewalling. And I know you have said compassion is the source of healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Right here. Here we go.
Fantastic.
Compassion is key to keeping love in. It's like the glue of the relationship, because love is beautiful and it means a lot. But if it doesn't have compassion associated with it or connected to it or attached to it, it becomes incomplete, right? You think of people who, like, they're together and maybe one person gets sick, and then over time they kind of disconnect, and the person, and maybe they break up because the other person becomes a shell of themselves, right? And that's always looked on negatively. And do you know why?
Why?
Because you see the person lacking in care and compassion for their partner.
Yeah.
Right? Compassion means the understanding of suffering. You're suffering with the person. Literally, the Latin etymology is suffering with. Okay, compassion. Passion actually means suffering. It doesn't mean really liking something. It means suffering for something. And if you don't understand that person's suffering, and if you don't take the time to understand that person's suffering, that can really lead to a disconnect. So compassion really is the glue of the relationship. And so, and this is, one of the slides from the program that I have, is compassion is critical for being a strong partner, because you need to have self-compassion. You need to understand what's going on for you, what you're really struggling with. And, this was for one of my male clients. Understanding your wife's suffering is critical for a strong relationship, because you need to take the time to understand what's going on with her, whether those, and women, by the way, women have way more health problems than men do. And that can be really hard for men to understand, just because they've never gone through it. And it's the most obvious thing is the whole menstrual cycle stuff that men never have to go through. But when it goes, childbirth, women are more affected by thyroid problems. There's a whole host of chronic health conditions that women tend to be more affected by than men, and it can be very difficult for someone to understand. And really, and sorry, I'm going a little bit of a rant here, but it's important, because the cause, in my opinion, of this lack of compassion is the whole "you need to tough it out" mentality of just kind of push through, it'll be okay. And it's like, some people really can't push through, and it's not their fault. They have real physiological issues that are preventing them from pushing through. So
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to, and again, I'm going to ask you about your legacy in a moment, and then we'll have to have you back on to talk about money in the context of this. Again, with more women being the bread earner
yeah,
and having the assets, and that creating fiscal inequity. But I wanted to kind of round out our conversation this lovely day regarding how important I think these skills are. So whether it's a long distance relationship, not just with pro athletes on the road or musicians or actors that are on a film location, but even when we see people having to travel often for business, they're all, planes, trains, and automobiles. And when they don't have these skills of knowing how to label and summarize and paraphrase. And again, the magic words are when he or she says, "That's right," or some other two keywords are "yes" or "exactly,"
yeah.
which
Well,
means, go ahead.
yeah. Sorry, no, please go ahead.
Was just seeing their view without giving in.
Right. Sorry, I think I missed the question there.
I just was summarizing that I think that these skills are so important, whether
Yeah,
somebody has a relationship structure where it's not just the 9 to 5, but those that are celebrities that
sure.
are going to be on a film location. Again, I can think of Meghan Markle. She was in Toronto filming, and I think that's why her first marriage fell apart. And or pro athletes, Khloe Kardashian, and all the basketball players, and so forth, or even Tiger Woods. There was a really good Forbes or maybe Fortune article that talked about that Tiger Woods had the best coaches around him, but nobody noticed the importance of the success of his marriage, and he was like a brand out there.
Hmm.
So there's a lot that can be at stake, whether it's one's heart, if there are children, and or financial resources that
Totally.
people see. They don't want to cut the pie in half, but they could end up cutting it in thirds, where the attorney takes a third, or the state. So, would you
Exactly.
like to say anything more about this before I ask you about what the word
No,
legacy
no,
means?
I think that, as the only thing I'd like to add, I think, is that in the world of high performance, learning how to perform highly in your relationship is just as important, if not the most important thing, along with learning how to perform well in your business, learning how to perform well as a parent, learning how to perform well at, if you're an artist, your art, or, these kind, all of the above. Your relationship is one aspect of your life, and we usually take that for granted. But it does require a little bit of learning, a little bit of work to make it work.
Thank you. Very well said. And I think that given today, whether it's fast fashion, the cancel culture, or how people have the attention span of a goldfish, I think that it is an active spirit to want to grow and learn. So, Alex, what does the word legacy mean personally to you?
To me, legacy means what you're leaving in the wake of your life here on earth. Um, so I like to view life almost like an ocean, and there are storms that happen over the ocean of life, and we're just like a little boat on that huge ocean. And the legacy is what's in the wake of my boat? You know, am I leaving, you know, the sludge of an oil tanker, or am I a beautiful sailboat and my family is kind of wakeboarding in the wake? You know, is like, there's a lot of fun analogies to that. But basically, what am I leaving behind for the world?
Yes. So, do you know what you would like your legacy to be? Would it be the coaching work? Is it your name on the side of a library? What would it be, Alex?
I think for me, it's more, did the work that I do here on earth positively impact people? And, you know, did it help them heal and improve their lives and themselves? And also, you know, for my family, did I leave behind a good, solid internal structure for my family to operate under? So, you know, did I raise a family with a lot of compassion? Did I raise a caring family? Did I raise kids who believe in themselves, who feel like they can go and make a difference in the world? Those are the kinds of things that I think are an important legacy to leave behind. I don't think that having my name on the side of a library really helps any of that. I think it's really like, how did I truly like touch people in their hearts?
Very nice. What would you say your top 3 to 4 values are, or a guiding principle?
I would say that my top 3 values are compassion, integrity, and I really like the Japanese term kaizen. Have you heard of that term?
No.
Kaizen is typically used in the business world to basically mean a kind of self-perpetuating improvement mechanism in the company, where all aspects of the business are improving themselves over time. And I think that that is, you know, obviously applicable to one's life. Are you trying to improve your life in all areas over time?
If you were to set aside a weekend or two, a month in the next year, to create a hardcover coffee table book, what would be in its pages for your coffee table, for your office, or for your home?
What would be in its pages? You mean like as like a book I can just kind of leaf through leisurely and be
Sure.
inspired by
There
those?
could be photos. I think you shared you were born in California, you were raised in London, England. So would
Mhm.
there be photos of your upbringing, your ancestry,
I see, I see.
your the
Yeah,
awards you've won, college diplomas, etc.?
I think there would be certainly images of my ancestry, family photos. I think that I would include, um, you know, mantras and affirmations that I like to say for my life. And I think I'd include some beautiful, you know, images that have been inspiring to me on the life that I'm trying to create. So even for, like, you know, if I pass and it was a coffee book of my life, it would be like, what were the pictures and the ideas and the figures in the world that were inspiring to me? So I might throw in like, you know, I might throw in Bruce Lee because I think he's cool and he did a lot of cool stuff. I might throw in Jesus Christ. I might throw in um, uh, Anthony William. I might throw in some other athletes like Usain Bolt, who I think is a lot of fun. Yeah. Does that answer your question, or is that
It
too vague?
does. It does. And I would like to, before I read out my closing paragraph,
Sure.
Are there any final thoughts, such as a website you would like to share for your business?
I am currently working on a website, and when it's ready, I will share it with you, and we can put it in the link below the video, below this video
Wonderful, for
in
the
the
show
description.
notes. Okay. I can
Yeah,
include your YouTube channel link for the meantime.
perfect. Yeah, that we can do that
Okay.
for now.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. I know that we started today's podcast episode with your mantra of divorce is preventable and the mission that you have, which is to prevent divorce and family breakups, given that you lived through watching your parents go through divorce when you felt that it could have been healed and reconciled given a few good skills. And
Mhm.
I just would like to thank you for the slides that you've brought and the preparation. It's been a pleasure to host you on this Designing Your Legacy podcast. And I would welcome you to come back later this year when you have a moment to talk about some of these topics again, because a legacy does involve relationships. It's more than the financial and the legal documents. So thank
Oh,
you for your
absolutely.
time
Thank you
today.
so much for having me, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I'd love to come back on, and actually, I just remembered I can share a website where I host a free course where I share all the information that I use to work with clients. I don't think that this information should be gate kept. I really believe that as many people as can have access to it make the world a better place. So I'm going to share that for people to join in the links. If you're struggling with something, join up, and you can also talk to me, direct message me on the platform. It's really easy and it's completely free.
Wonderful. Okay.
Thanks,
So in
Angelina.
Thanks. So, in closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder to Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, but international in those I consult. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education or preparation for the moot or moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you for joining us today. If you're tuning in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and so forth, please remember to like, share, review, share again with your family and friends. Let us know your thoughts about today's conversation. So thank you so much for joining us this week. And thank you, Alex, for speaking into your legacy.